Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast. My name is Jed and we are reading the Philosophical Midwifery book. I haven't been streaming as regularly as I have been in the past because I've been focused on music stuff, but I'm hoping to find a way of organizing it into my schedule more regularly. And I'm taking podcasts when I can, which is today, because I've actually started to feel the significance of not reading one of these books every day, which might be part of our question: what is it to be a philosopher, or what is it to have the excellence of the human being, as we're reading in the Meno? Or, with midwifery, what would be the highest expression of self free of any pathologos? What would be the activity to reach that? What would be the functioning of that? And one of the things, what's the expression? One of the things people say, one of the things I've heard mentioned around those who have been studying philosophical midwifery is make sure you've got a nose in the book. Like every morning, read if you can. And they would have reading groups, by the way. They would read Parmenides, sometimes like five mornings a week. So have you found a significance of how your day unfolds, or how your relationship to the Logos unfolds during your day? Do you notice more of the Logos? Are you able to function through the Logos yourself? Are you able to steer clear of your Pathologos, or maybe even apply Logos to your Pathologos to gain insight? And how does having read something or listened to this podcast or a similar podcast, or done a reading yourself of this book or a Balboa translation of Plato, how does that affect your day? Having done it in the morning, having not done it, doing it every day, doing it every other day. One thing I am noticing is you're kind of operating in the world with less clues. The reason why we're picking these two books to read for philosophy and not any of the million other philosophers out there is because this is the highest, or these are books written that reflect the Logos, the self-Logos, the thing that we want to understand as a paradigm through which we will be able to judge all the other philosophers, because their state of mind will be ranked somewhere along this paradigm. Understanding the paradigm of states of mind and ways of thinking is the Logos, which is the title of the section that we're in at the moment. So what? One of, or if not the primary principle of this chapter is it is entirely possible for us to verify for ourselves that we live in a intelligible and caring universe. So that caring element, or what we sometimes call providence, has to function through something intelligible. No, thumbs up. And that's the Logos. So the third hypothesis of Parmenides is characterized by a pairing or a couple. That's a question. Are they a couple? Are they a pair? Anyway, of Logos and Providence, or the understandability and a profound, genuine, intimate care, entirely appropriate to your circumstances and your level of development as a soul. So what? So that's that means that as we read, we are gaining various levels of care. Now, especially in our reading of Meno, we are seeing, we're learning how to think, we're learning how to do the dialectic, we're learning how to define things as Meno can't do. Equally so in philosophical midwifery, we're removing our problems, but we're also learning this dialectic, this way of thinking that allows us to reflect on our problems in a structured way in order to free ourselves from our problems. We're learning this dialectic. But also at the same time, there may be a level of care being extended to you relevant to your wanderings or your daily activities, or in other words, the immediate, not just the long term, or not just the transcendent. And how we would look for that kind of providence or care would be, well, doing our best to live what we are learning, specifically wondering, having a question, looking for the logos, looking for the intelligibility, reflecting ousia as much as we can, using the dialectic to guide us as much as we can. And as we do that, we might start to notice some synchronicities or maybe even have some insights into our question. Now, one thing that happens for some people is if you've been reading, then maybe a key passage that you read that morning that reflects the logos, the self-logos, because that's the books that we read, confirms your insight or reflects it in a kind of poetic or ironic or symmetrical. Really, these are just words that are all kinds of symmetry. Is it a funny symmetry? Is it a tragic symmetry? Is it an ironic symmetry? But there's a symmetry there, a symmetry between what you came to see, but might need some confirmation on because it's a new insight. How do you make sure it's not a wind egg, as Socrates says? So it's not validation, but it's a kind of confirmation from something, from the logos, which may be a passage that you read that day, or there might be a puzzle that you are carrying from your reading that vice versa might play out, and you will see the implications of that being played out in your daily drama. That might give you an insight to your question, or your reading might provide the material for the clues to puzzles that you're having in your life. So not just a confirmation of your insight, but might give you some material or some clues to fill in the answer and gain the insight. These are things I have heard said around those parts back in the day when the people were doing these things. So it would follow that if you weren't reading or you didn't have, those 2 hours in your back pocket worth of self-logos, worth of reflections of the logos, you might be limiting yourself. Now, those sorts of people who may suggest that sort of thing would go on further and say, hey, by the way, do you realize the entire point of the Republic like a very high reflection of the Logos, Plato's masterpiece. Again, leads into the Parmenides, so that could sit higher. But anyway, the Republic is about freeing yourself from the chains of ignorance, what we might call the Pathologos. It isn't in Plato, so that's a puzzle for us. Like, I mean, it's quite obvious his teacher was killed when he was quite young, so Plato might not have mastered philosophical midwifery. Nevertheless, we can recognize the elements of the Pathologos in his cave analogy, and his instruction to us is to free ourselves from the cave of our ignorant images about self and reality that we take to be real, the Pathologos, and climb out of the cave of ignorance into the real world, ultimately to see the brilliant light of being, or the idea of the good, which you can use, therefore, after that, as the standard for justice and beauty in all of your affairs, specifically in the dialectic, and equally so in philosophical midwifery. We challenge the images of beauty, or the appearance of justice, or the false belief about justice, against our understanding of what they are. So, as Plato points out, you can, if you are able to experience ousia, or direct or ultimate reality, the brilliant light of being, the idea of the good, or the idea of the self, the experience of the self. This is important and necessary for your model of justice and beauty. But in order to reach that level of functioning in the dialectic, which is the final study of the Republic, which is supposed to be the last thing you do before encountering this vision of reality, of beauty, of justice. In order to gain that mastery of the dialectic, Socrates says you have to study your dreams. The dreams, says Socrates, give you the specifics. Okay, I'm paraphrasing. Yeah, only in your dreams are you given the particulars and specifics of your personal problem that you can use to free yourself from your Pathologos, says Socrates in the Republic. So they would go through all that with me, probably, knowing these people, and say, and therefore, I'm peaking a little bit in my audio. And therefore, not only is it important for you to read either Plato or midwifery every morning, or something along those lines, something that reflects the self-logos, so Proclus even, it's also important to do your dreams every morning, for the specific clues and content to unlock something needed to be seen and has yet to be seen, or is being overlooked, pertaining to your Pathologos. And we would say, interesting. And hopefully somebody in this community or in the Discord will say, I've actually tried both. I've tried making sure I do one of these readings every morning and review my dreams according to the dialectic as best I can. And I did it every day for a month, and then I did it every other day in the next month, and I could compare. And I shared my results on our Discord channel, and everybody cheered. because that means that everybody else gets to benefit from all of your good work, and we salute you.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
Wow.
With sound drops. That would be neat to I mean, ideally we'd all, I mean, that's the joke, right? We'd all like to do both, and even that second month is probably going to be extremely beneficial for the development of your soul or your awakening into the Logos, because every second day doing dream analysis and reading at the start of it to gather all of that juicy providential Logos, that's probably a lot more than what you did this month, if I'm guessing. So, on that note, let's jump back into our reading, and let's pick it up at the start of, we're at part 10 of 11 parts in the second chapter. Keeping in mind, the opening of the chapter is entirely possible to verify for oneself we live in a caring and providential universe. So let's jump in. Here we go. I've been messing with my streaming setup in order to accommodate my music stream. Jed Phoenix Music on Twitch is where you can find that. So the setup has changed, so I hope the audio is okay, and yeah, and you can hear me and it sounds lovely. And then I'll just cough right into the mic. And yeah, okay, I think it's working. Let's read from here. 10th. Knowing there is the possibility of resolving our own pathologos places a new responsibility upon us. We want to... It's been a while since I read. We want our understanding of ourselves to be confirmed in our own experience. We recognize within us the need to demonstrate to ourselves that our speculations and dialogues have a vital connection to reality. As our conclusions bind us, they also have the power to loosen the bonds of the pathologos. Conclusions. We can see the evolution from belief into the Logos as we reflect on what was necessary to emerge from the web of the Pathologos. The evolution from belief into the Logos as we reflect on what was necessary to emerge from the web of the Pathologos. The movement is integrative. It brings what was separated together into a unity. Each philosophical midwife talk is an opportunity to add another piece to the puzzle, and each piece is tested in the immediacy of our everyday life. It is tested because we carry our understanding with us. Understanding is not something we can choose to turn on and off. It is our way of seeing. We see through what we understand. We do not have to learn to act with our understanding. We act through what we understand. In this change, we become more attentive to what unfolds before us and act more decisively. Wow. While it takes courage to return to these unresolved conflicts, yes, it does.
Wow. What? Wow.
It takes cool-headedness to allow ourselves to be with our understanding. Courage and cool-headedness and following understanding. Sounds like 3 important things to do as much as possible. If anybody has read Book 3 of the Republic, they'll get that reference. Other human virtues... Other human virtues are also tested as one proceeds. But by far the most important is the desire to discover the truth about oneself and reality. Then the North Star for us as human adventurers on the quest to know the self, for human excellence, to discover our destiny, our highest purpose. The guiding light is our desire to discover the truth about self and reality, oneself and reality. Notice oneself. Pierre putting that word in. A word that we recognize from Plato and the Parmenides. The oneself being the hybrid term with two parts, one and self, that Parmenides uses to describe his hypothesis of himself. Super, super cool. All right. The natural result of this progress is that the philosophical midwife learns to trust in reason. We would use the word logos. Actually, why isn't he using the word logos? It's the name of the thing. I was thinking maybe he's holding it back because our understanding of the logos has evolved through all of the different texts that we've been reading from Plato. What happened? Okay. Anyway, trust in reason. Fair enough. And to be guided by the principles of our art. That's also important. There needs to be principles. Facing a problem brings us to see that there may be something we haven't grasped with clarity. For to attempt to achieve what we have failed at before is to reopen those earlier conflicts, and that means we run the risk of encountering failure once again. There is no alternative if we are to seek to realize our dreams, because part of our conflicts have not been part of our conflicts. Because whatever part of our conflicts has not been seen will emerge to block us. Thus, it is a certainty that these conflicts will reappear. But what is different is the knowledge that all this can be anticipated. It can be studied, and in the very moment of its appearance, there is the challenge to resolve it. Ooh. So if that were to be represented in a play... Oh, welcome to the chat, Sus. So this might be, if you were to have a narrative, like some sort of play, this might be the turning point. And in a tragedy, the tragic hero will have had in the course of the play enough opportunity to learn this in order to anticipate this problem and now be able to respond to it in a new way that he has to learn, different from his upbringing. Or if it's a tragedy, he will have a tragic flaw, what we might recognize as a pathologos, that gives him a blind spot and prevents him from doing this. And therefore, he takes the wrong path and it ends in tragedy. So what? Hiya. Doing good. Full of wonder. So what we are being given is the archetype for what is needed for the main character in any production, including your life, including your day, maybe even including the moment. The paradigm to use in order to be able to not have the tragic result, or the what do you call it? The tragic flaw? The tragic, what's the turning point in a tragedy called? The crisis? I don't know. I can't remember drama class from high school. But not have that turning point end badly, in a way that everyone else in the crowd hopefully has learnt to anticipate and would have challenged in a different way in order to resolve it. The audience is in on it, the main character isn't because of his tragic flaw. That's the style. But as we explore in the symposium, philosophy offers a third archetype beyond comedy, tragedy, philosophy, provided a philosopher has the tools to be able to make the correct choice. And we talked about at the start of today, Socrates saying, well, that only comes in dreams. What we are reading here is, well, we'd have to also add philosophical midwifery to that. So, isn't that neat? We are gaining a, what's the word, master key for unlocking all of the dramas that we potentially live out through our lives. With this art. So we will therefore be able to anticipate the problems that arise, not be blind to it like the tragic hero, and be able to challenge it with a new method of being or way of understanding, because we have learnt it here, unlike the tragic hero who has a flaw that prevents him from changing. Usually some loyalty to a family clan belief. Maybe. We are given an opportunity to confirm our understanding. So, and in the moment of it, there is... so there's a risk and there's some courage involved in going back to address our early conflicts, because we might relive the failure again. It can be painful, yada yada. Yada yada. I'm not yadaing away the courage it takes, but the difference in this particular case is we can anticipate the reappearance of the problems we have been reflecting on and understanding, and when they do surface again, we will be able to challenge it and resolve it. We are given an opportunity to confirm our understanding, test it, and improve its precision. Interesting, you can improve on understanding. And it is in this process we enter into the Logos. Ooh. But the Logos is not merely understanding, for the understanding that one has reached must be tested and confirmed in experience. The confirming is an integrative movement, for without testing and validating our understanding in our reality, we are left with only possibilities or likely stories. Whatever one is seeing and understanding, it will not be retained. And its maturing power will be lost. Unless confirmed in one's experience. It is by returning again and again to test one's vision in one's present circumstances that maturity is gained and the Logos becomes manifest. So today we were talking about seeing the Logos, looking out for the Logos. How can we load up on Logos at the start of the day by looking at our dreams and having a nose in one of these two books? But here he's describing the participating in the logos, the entering into the logos as a process or a habit or a repetition or a cycle of confirming our understanding, testing it, repeating the process to improve the precision of our understanding over and over, testing and validating. It's a relationship. It's a way of being. To always look for the logos or follow the logos or test the logos of your understanding in experience needed to retain the understanding, integrate it, and hopefully this is a kind of retaining that can go beyond even this lifetime, which is one of the significant things about this study. That is the anagogic benefit. So the specific, relevant to you benefit, developing as a person, solving your problems, becoming free, discovering the self, mastering the art of all arts. But anagogic being that which transcends or applies to the highest level of learning. Anagogic, the highest expression of the analogy. So that's pretty cool to wonder about whether or not we're learning something and integrating something into our sense of self or way of being that can transcend death. Death is a big thing. Immortality, or wondering about immortality, what happens after we die. It's a big thing for people. Does this change any of your feelings or attitudes? That we are retaining and being ourselves matured by our understanding we gain through of the self and reality that we gain through philosophical midwifery and is tested in our experience, confirmed and refined through successive repetitions of this ousia or repetitions of this dialectic, because dialectic is a relationship and way of being, but it's also a relationship and way of being that may be able to be used or may apply equally to higher and higher levels of reality. A way of being you can take with you beyond even this lifetime. Now, of course, when we say beyond this lifetime and death, that's no different in the Phaedo. Yes, I'm live. Hi, welcome. From contemplation or meditation, separating the soul from the body. That's the activity described in the Phaedo, which is useful because it allows you to do philosophy better. But also, hooray. Imagine how much more focused you'd be able to be on your reading or your dialectic or the logos or your contemplation if you didn't have to take a bio break, for instance. Now add all the Pathologos distractions and tangents in there as well. Okay. That is not to say that in the act of separating the soul from the body you are free from your Pathologos, but from what we read or from what we've heard, it does have a power. I think we read it in this book. It does have a diminishing. It can dilute or diminish the strength of the Pathologos. And if you think about it, what's the Pathologos? A false belief about yourself and reality being less or inadequate. And so if you are separating your soul from the body and you are remembering that you are also pure being, beauty itself, of course, the Pathologos image telling you that you're the opposite is going to lose its power for a while because you are in it, you are knowing that that's not true. Of course it's not true, you are remembering. So we can understand why they'll say, oh yeah, it has a can dilute or diminish the power of the Pathologos for some time, but it's only temporary, yada yada. You still have to dissolve it through this, which is why we're reading this. One of the many reasons. Right, and it's a relationship. This participation in the Logos is a relationship. And I always think about music in a similar way. You're always getting better. If you're a musician, you play music. That's what it means. If you're a philosopher, you go through this process every day. Or every moment. And when you're out of your body. Okay, so we remember it if we retain it, and it has a maturing power if we confirm our understanding and experience, and we return one again and again to test our vision in our present circumstances. If we do that, we gain a maturity, and the Logos that we are following becomes manifest. We know too well that only in our present circumstances can we confirm and verify our understanding. Since being in a problem is responding to the present as if it were the past Pathologos scene, we apply a past solution problem. I don't have a sound. Past solution to an analogous situation in the present. It's just like that, we think, without realizing the scenes are only in part analogous. Thus, in seeking out those present scenes that are analogous to our Pathologos scenes, we find the arena in which we can emerge, oh, I love this language, from the catacombs of false belief. Whoa. Because it is there that we can test whether or not we are free from those conclusions that bind us to the past. Now, what's that? That's an invitation to a really high level of participation in this process. Whatever your reason be for doing that, maybe you don't have time left, maybe you don't think humanity has time left, or maybe you just really want to get your goals, or you really want to be free. Because he's saying you can actually, once you become more familiar with the past Pathologos scene, you can go out of your way in your everyday life to seek analogous situations to test whether or not you are applying the past solution analogously to something similar here. If you still are doing it, there's more to see on your problem because it's not exactly the same. The solution you came to in the past was a false conclusion about the self that might have kept you alive within that family clan, or gave you a role, allowed you, we looked at all of the conditions needed to the conditions we were in so that we necessarily had to come to this conclusion. Nevertheless, it's a false conclusion. You are not inadequate in whatever specific way your Pathologos says. So you can't apply that, at least that part of the solution is not analogous. So we're reading an invitation to a kind of really brave or really advanced or really, what's the word? YOLO? No. YOLO? That's how I dab. Approach to your own development. Look for it. Oh, I'm learning that this is my Pathologos scene. I'm going to go out and look for it. I'm going to seek a personally meaningful goal in this specific arena that is analogous in a lot of ways to that early scene to see if there's any more I need to see to become free. And to that we say,
Wow. 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 Wow.
wow. That sounds neat. And if you've got a group of friends who are all doing this, mastering the art of philosophical midwifery, fulfilling their destiny, the higher purpose, it sounds like you have a kick-ass life. And good for you. And go for it. And let us know how it goes. Part of the process, I think, is sharing your ups and your downs, your successes, the difficulties that you faced, and maybe how you address them. So if you have that kind of click, that you, as a group who midwife each other, can go out and do this in this kind of way, seek out the analogous situations, then hooray for you. And invite me to live in your commune. I don't know, wherever this is happening. In seeking out those present scenes that are analogous to those early pathological scenes, we find the arena in which we can emerge. From the catacombs of false belief. I gotta get better at these drops. Because it is there that we can test whether or not we are free of those conclusions that bind us to the past. While it is clear that the imposition of belief establishes power and authority over the subject, it is not at all obvious that we always have the opportunity to get out of it. In every moment, there is the chance to get out of our submission and to regain our integrity. In every moment. There we go. So the cycle of the dialectic, you come back around to the beginning, or the cycle of Usia, you come back around to the start. We talked about how this could be an everyday thing. But every moment there is an opportunity to close that circle. Is that interesting? In every moment there is the chance to get out of our submission, to regain our integrity, and in this struggle to become more authentically, and in this struggle to become more authentically ourselves. Oh yes, and in doing this we struggle to become more authentically ourselves. The network of the Pathologos is what we struggle against, and its formidable structure is nothing other than that set of interpretations we accepted as real. Interpretations, they weren't real. No. No. Not real. We accepted them as real. And that's what we're struggling against. A formidable structure, a network. We've talked about it being a web and a network and a net, maybe. Formidable structure. The power is then assured and kept in place by our reluctance to examine each and every claim that lies behind the Pathologos. This is why it's important to not do debates. If you think that someone being wrong means they lose, they won't ever be wrong. They will refuse to reflect on anything that they believe for fear of being caught doing something wrong. This is a fundamental change we have to make. Problems are not excuses to catch someone being wrong, to insist on the Pathologos you are therefore bad or inadequate in order to justify violence that we call punishment. No. Instead, it is entirely possible to verify for ourselves that we live in a caring and intelligible universe. Therefore, every problem we have is an opportunity to reflect on it and solve it as a puzzle, which will have an uplifting and hopefully purifying effect on us. And if it benefits the soul, it will benefit the whole of humanity. So, very, very important, never to play the blame game, and instead, never accept punishment, never accept admonishment if you made a mistake, because all mistakes are clues to your puzzle. Always. So no clip chimping or slip chimping. Oh, and in this way we're all the same, so no more racism. Hooray, we solved racism.
Wow.
Because that's true for everybody. Okay, and true for everybody is there's the power of this false interpretations we accept as real is assured and kept in place by our reluctance to examine each and every claim that lies behind the Pathologos. This is a good principle for talking with people as well. People who gish gallop or debate or want to make speeches. Socrates says, no, we don't do speeches, we do dialectic. Why? Because it's easy to string a sentence which puts four false claims together to come with to end up in a terrible and false conclusion. Therefore, you have to examine each and every claim. Therefore, rattling off a list of things in a debate is bad. Don't do it. Gish galloping is bad. Don't do it. Each and every claim. That lies behind the Pathologos is nothing other than the effect of not reviewing what we ourselves have concluded, because in not reviewing these conclusions, we tacitly accept the interpretations. Don't tacitly accept. Based on the learnings enshrined in the Pathologos. Wow, look at that, enshrined. That is a word that really points to the game that we get to play. Hooray for us. Because we are reading this and we are reading Plato, any insight that we get in one realm, midwifery in the Pathologos or philosophy in the Logos, we can give ourselves, we can unlock it's like an infinite question glitch. We can unlock a new question for ourselves. What would be the reflected analogical equivalent within the other thing? In other words, if you learn something about the Pathologos idea of beauty that's false and causes our problems, the reason why it can have that effect will be because there's that aspect of the soul that responds to beauty in that way, such that even its appearance can have that effect. So you can ask, what would be the true experience of beauty? And in this particular instance, we see that there are learnings enshrined. There is an enshrinement. That's a spiritual word. Enshrine your holy experience in a way that you can contemplate, meditate on it, contemplate it, retain it, keep it, enshrine it. So therefore, we can ask the question, if this is what happens to our false learnings, is what would be the equivalent in our true learnings? And is there equally an enshrining process in what we learn in the Logos and dialectic, such that it can be retained which was the question we were on earlier. Isn't that interesting? So yeah, enshrine, reminding us that we get to play that game. Anything that we are wondering about here, we can wonder about it there. Logos and its distorted reflection in the Pathologos, which is neat. More questions to carry and insights to have. How's my lighting? Woof. Alright, I'm gonna stay here. So if we refuse to review because we're getting dragged into debates or blame game, or if we lack the courage, or we don't realize that we have the ability to change it now, so it is worth doing, whatever is preventing us from examining each and every claim about our Pathologos, we are tacitly accepting the false interpretations that are based on learnings that are enshrined in the Pathologos. Interesting. The Pathologos what? The Pathologos self? So with our higher question, if we do, are there good learnings that are enshrined in the actual self? How would you enshrine your highest learnings in the self? By applying the logos to the one self? Anyway, these are questions that we can have and we can carry with us that can maybe pay off down the line or guide us later in the day. This is the wonder of looking for and following the logos. Hooray for us.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win. All right, as long as we don't examine the legitimacy of the claims, they have the power over us. These beliefs were crafted in our youth, and we struggle against them our entire lives. Boo. The principle of forcing, well, unless you do this, run straight towards your problems, because you got the awesome crew. I don't know. If you did have those guys or those friends that were equally on this quest, you'd probably have a better, cooler gang name than the awesome crew. So please let us know in the Discord what name you came up with for yourselves. So yeah, so we don't have to struggle our entire lives if you're with the Too Wise crew. Good name. Because they're looking for analogous situations to their Pathologos to actively speed up their reflection or their learning. Which is also one of the reasons why people say dream analysis is important. If you live a lifetime in each dream and you dream 3 or 4 times a night, you have the ability potentially to reflect on that life without having to live out an entire reincarnation. You could do in one lifetime, provided you do dream analysis, but another soul might take thousands of lifetimes to do. Now, is that true? Only you can tell me in the Discord after doing it and seeing if it's true. Which is what? Testing our understanding in our immediate experience. So, if you were really brave, because you're in the Too Wise crew, that's our thing. It's a W for Too Wise crew. See, the 2 is here, and then the W for wise, and then there's a C here. It's Too Wise crew. That's what we call ourselves. I'm imagining in the future I'm going to be invited, so I can say it. Yeah, just as the Too Wise crew runs towards analogous scenes analogous to the early Pathologos scenes, you could run towards dreams for the same reason, to speed up your evolutionary process. As you live a kind of lifetime in each dream that you can reflect on to get the message of. Provided you do the dialectic and midwifery. Thing about that is you don't have to put any work into running towards your dreams, because it's going to happen at the end of the day anyway. Which is why it was a very funny thing that I said. No. See, very, very funny, and everybody was happy. And can you imagine running towards your dreams? Why do that? It will happen anyway. Now, speaking of bad lighting, or maybe this one. Okay, so we struggle against them our entire lives, unless. The principle of forcing experience to conform to belief is the act of interpretation. The Pathologos cannot be believed without interpretation. Once interpretation is accepted, the dramatic episode with all its particular stages becomes the model for relating in all analogous situations. Naturally, the adherence to a rational method. It's interesting because the episode has stages. And maybe you notice that certain people you run into, they're trying to insist on certain roles. Let me give you advice. What? You want me advice? You want to be a believer? You want me to accept your beliefs? As we read here, beliefs have the power to, what was it? We read it. Beliefs have the power to oppress or something. People try and use their beliefs to just crush others, oppress others. We read it. Where did it say it? Alright, forget about that. Right, so the idea is people sometimes, and you might recognize this, will try and insist on certain roles in your relationship or in your conversation. One easy one is when people start giving advice, because advice is a belief. No one gives a crap about beliefs. Beliefs are dumb. We're trying our best to remove beliefs so we can be free to participate in understanding and truth. So why do advice? Well, it's a role. It's a role where you pass off your opinions and beliefs. And who gets to do that? Parents. It's a Pathologos. So they're insisting on their parental Pathologos role and wanting you to play the child role, what was their role. And often, let me give you advice, or condescension. It kind of feels like condescension, that kind of thing. Isn't what you are feeling and recognizing is insistence on certain roles that reflect analogously their early Pathologos scene. And what we are reading here is there are also steps within the drama. So they might also try and navigate towards certain points. And you might even see a smile creep on their face when they are at the high point or the reaction point or whatever. Like they know what's going to happen because it's all part of the same stagnant relationship with the logos. So we talked about as we learn to see the logos and how we talk about the virtues that we develop as we do it and the conditions that we try and put ourselves in to be more receptive to the logos. And we talked about it being a relationship. Equally so, we are all, if we're not in that relationship with the logos, by default, we fall into this one, which is a relationship, but it doesn't evolve up in the way that we're seeing. We test our experience and we integrate it and we get matured by it, and it evolves up and up and up until we reach Socrates in the higher levels of pure being, where he says he's waiting for the philosophers to join him on that journey. And beyond, and off and off and off and off. On and on and on to the self and beyond and wherever it goes. And if you do go on that journey, multi-dimensional journey, please come back and share your experiences with the rest of us in the Discord, and maybe invite some of us along for the next trip. That would be neat. We would be very grateful. It would be a win-win.
It's a win-win.
So the difference being, again, the benefit that we're in, that we have Plato and Pierre, is we can see it reflected. We can see one reflected in the other. So, scroll up a bit here. Right, so the difference being, if it's a distorted reflection, like, it's a win-win.
It's a win-win.
I need more sound drops. Yes, so just as we are seeing our Pathologos is not exactly analogous, so too is the Pathologos not exactly analogous to the Logos. There are some things that are the same, there are some things that are different. What's the difference that makes this a distortion? Well, you're not in a relationship with the Logos that spirals up. You are in a circular, stagnant spiral of repeating cycles of the same drama, the same steps, with a block functioning specifically to block any further development. So it is cyclical. It is a relationship, but it doesn't go up anywhere. You're just as dumb as when you were 4. That's not an insult to anyone who hasn't started to do midwifery yet. It's a hilarious and charming, and therefore completely inoffensive, pointing at something that's a true fact that might wake you up and give you a chuckle and maybe encourage you to join the Two Wise crew. Do your job. Do your purpose. Master this art. And again, share it with the rest of us on the Discord. Share your midwifery art with all of us and help us along this path too. If you like. It's not a demand. But it would be a...
It's a win-win.
There you go. So, okay, where were we? Right, the stages in the model that people insist upon. And every time you'll be in that situation, you'll react the same way. Which is why we don't take certain friends to certain places. Or we don't allow certain friends to drink certain drinks. Or whatever, right? It's always the same. Naturally, the adherence to a rational method means that there must be no interpretations or other forms of intrusion by the midwife as well. Interpretation is when someone adds to or subtracts from what is being considered. This adding and subtracting distorts the meaning of what is being reflected upon, and it changes it into the belief of the interpreter, forcing reality to fit your beliefs. Interpretation, conscious or unconscious, is the forced delivery of the interpreter's own offspring. Now imagine representing that dramatically. Those of you out there who are also interested in film or animation or something, could you imagine that scene? Holy crap. A midwife somehow forcing the person that they're supposed to be helping give birth, forcing their own child into the pregnant person and then forcing them to give birth to the other person's child. That's not even a true offspring, but is a distortion based on their pathologos, influenced interpretations. So the midwife is making the woman give birth to a baby that's distorted or deformed in some way, like an alien. That's gross. I can't believe you were thinking of making that movie. Actually, it would be awesome because you could say, oh no, it's meaningful. It's meaningful. It's a dramatic representation of the importance of following principles in philosophical midwifery. Remember we read, the more that you do it, the more you see that you can trust the logos or trust the reason as it unfolds organically. You don't have to bring your own conclusions in or do all this prep work kind of thing. You're given what you need in the logos, and that's part of being a philosopher, always looking to the logos, seeing if you have what you need in every situation. Maybe you always did, because that's reality, part of it being providential. These are the questions that we have, we carry, and we test, and we refine, and we integrate, and we're matured by that process as we're reading. So we learn to trust reason and principles. So what happens if you don't follow principles? That horrific scene in that movie that you made, that guy that I'm talking, or girl that I'm talking to. It wasn't just a gross horror thing. It was meaningful because it showed what happened if you don't trust in reason and principles. The principle of not influencing through your own logos or interpreting or bringing your beliefs in because you're forcing the delivery. You've seen the movie, you know how gross it is, but also meaningful, which is why I smell an Oscar. I don't know. I'm putting a lot of energy into manifesting this sort of community where there are a lot of us doing it and integrating it into their everyday art. But also, give me something to watch. Like, there's only so many times I can rewatch Blue Lock or Solo Leveling. Make that movie, please. So here we go. The method. Adherence to a rational method means there must be no interpretations or other forms of intrusion by the midwife. Interpretation is when someone adds to or subtracts from what is being considered. This adding and subtracting distorts the meaning of what is being reflected upon. Distorts. And it changes it into the belief of the interpreter. Interpretation, conscious or unconscious, is the forced delivery of the interpreter's own offspring, the result of a solitary fantasy of the interpreter. In contrast, the midwife and pregnant party together proceed to deliver what is ready to be brought to birth. Interesting. So it seems like part of this process involves I don't know, being able to check the temperature of the turkey to see if it's ready to come out of the oven. Cross-pollinating metaphors there. Bun in the oven. Midwife analogy. I don't know. What do we say? Oh, thank you. Also, this activity of considering what has been reflected upon without adding to it or subtracting from it is what we have been practicing this whole podcast. It's why we read differently, why we read one page every 2 hours or something to that effect. We are, of course, it's content that is deeply rich, number one. Number two, we realize that the reading isn't for its own sake. We're not dusty academics. It's to give birth to puzzles and give us logos, self-logos terms to solve puzzles or awaken new puzzles or awaken insight into the puzzles of our life, our problems. So for that reason also, the content is so rich and significant, and we're not trying to just chalk up numbers like this guy.
It's a win. There's only two options.
Have you read Brand at
This
all?
guy.
Have you read Nagel? What about Scanlon? Have you read Scanlon or Scruton or Edmund Burke? Have you read C.S. Lewis? Have you read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe?
That way of thinking of philosophy. Look at all these people I've read. So there are a lot of other reasons why we can read at this pace, but specifically as well, we are practicing what it's like to read without interpretation. Because we want to see what's there, not infect it with whatever crap fantasies we're carrying with us in our brains. Now, obviously, it's not a brain, I'm joking, but we are carrying it with us in how we project. So, all of these activities, midwifery, reading, everything else that we do, we are honing and perfecting and crafting the same discipline or the same activity or the same development to see what's there without interpretation. And ultimately, that's probably, you could say that's the goal of midwifery itself. To remove that which causes any interpretation. We're seeing what it is. It's a analogy, incorrect solution from a analogy that shouldn't be applied. So we never interpret, we never add to what's there or try and make it fit into our beliefs. Yeah, and instead can address the situation properly. Yeah, so we're doing that as we read too, which is neat. All right. Okay, the midwife and the pregnant party together proceed to deliver what is ready to be brought to birth. The birth must be the pregnant party's own and not contaminated by the beliefs of the midwife. Challenging interpretations is testing their legitimacy. It's important to challenge interpretations. Okay, so this is where we read up to. Knowing the importance of testing, we return to a true dat from chat. Knowing the importance of testing, we return to a... Here is a dinosaur, by the way. See that guy over there? That's his baby. See, he pats him. Good son. You are a good Godzilla son. Anyway. Knowing the importance of testing, we return with a cautious spirit to those... here we go. So we return because, courage and all that. Virtue and all that. doing it by practice and discipline until we're Pathologos free and we realize that we are courage itself, because that's the end of the game. Will the virtues integrate into the self? Anyway, that's the Meno. We're discussing virtues in the Meno. The importance is, so we're returning with a cautious spirit. So we're returning with our courage and everything else that we said. Good for us. Hooray. But a cautious spirit to those situations we find most significant. So this has to be personally significant. And where we experience the blocks. So that's similar. Yeah, where we have the blocks to our goals. We have to have our own goals. Our goals. We're not Cinderella's. Spending our lives being a slave to the goals of other people. Who are likely people who are not doing midwifery. Because if they were doing midwifery, they wouldn't want you to be a slave to them anyway. Anyway, so. In other words, if you are doing midwifery, you need to be in charge. Of yourself. But also maybe be a good influence on others. We are offered the opportunity to be true to ourselves when we return to those present problem scenes. Offered an opportunity to be true to ourselves. Because it is then that we can see if there is still something we haven't understood. Interesting. So by testing in this kind of a way, you're being true to yourself. So good for you. Round of applause to you. Have I gone orange again? So we're looking to understand. For if there is something we can't resist slipping into, so if there is, there's something you haven't seen, something you still haven't, understood, then you can't resist slipping into those old roles we were just talking about. Remember? Our friend who always wants to give you advice or whatever, or the friend who always does this or that, you have those friends, you know what they're like. They can't resist slipping into those old roles and play out the Pathologos. It is by such testing that sooner or later, so if we test, we're being true to ourselves, but also sooner or later we meet the situation directly and without premeditation. And we see that we can act in a way that is wholly appropriate to... Wow, look at this. Okay. Sooner or later we is the last thing we highlighted here. Because here, look. We meet the situation directly. So this is a new way of being in the situation that wasn't available to us up until now. What is it? We're able to meet the situation directly. 1. Without premeditation. You don't have to plan for it. You can respond. And we see that we can act in a way that is wholly appropriate to the situation. Okay, wholly appropriate to the situation. Addressing it directly without any need for planning or premeditation, and wholly consistent with our noblest goals. So we are in some sort of alignment. We have noblest goals, number 1, and we are, of course, because you can't be in the process of midwifery without having noble goals, because midwifery solves problems. In order to have a problem, well, you have to understand what a problem is. And a problem is specifically a block from your noblest goals. So we have noblest goals, but now we are we're acting wholly consistent with them most appropriately to the situation, addressing the core of the situation directly, not any fake questions or pretend questions or trap questions or invitations to play these pathologos roles of others. No, or of your own. No, we are addressing the situation directly without any of those interpretations or projections or trying to fit into the mold. Without premeditation, wholly appropriate to the situation, wholly consistent with your noble goals. Hooray for us. That sounds kick-ass awesome. Sign me up, please. Hooray.
Have you read Brand?
It is then that we learn what it takes to be oneself. So we're getting some information here about this whole thing, maybe what it means to be oneself, which is a goal we have, right? Ourself without the domination of the pathologos. Wow. Is it the same thing? Are they the same somehow? As a consequence, we find... So what's the same? Being oneself, is it the same as being without the pathologos? So is midwifery therefore taking us to the very place that philosophy is supposed to take us to? Or in order to be free of your problem, you have to be doing philosophy too. So you're not taking another route to the same goal, you're actually walking that path too. I like that second one, but it's a question. I have questions. It's a wonderment. As a consequence, we find our interrelationships with others are now marked with a spirit of fairness. Our interrelation... Well, he's talking more about what it means to be oneself or free from pathologos. This is interesting. This is, by the way, you might recognize that as being in the zone, or the ideal of the samurai, or the ideal of martial arts, to respond to the situation directly without any planning your move. You're acting spontaneously, but most appropriately. The difference is between that and this is my lighting is, I think it's the sunlight coming in makes me look a bit pale. Anyway, the difference is we're not using that state to win a martial arts tournament or win some sort of underground tournament under the stadium of, I don't know, a big city like Tokyo, where all of the most badass fighters meet to determine who is the ultimate greatest fighter of all mankind. But I'm not supposed to talk about that or how many times I've won, because it doesn't exist. You're not using that state of being to win that, which doesn't even exist. And don't ask me how I know. You're using it to reach your most noblest goals. That's a difference. You're not in the zone shooting 3-pointers. You are pursuing your most noblest goals, which is an added quality to this description of flow state, maybe, or a kind of enlightenment, maybe, a kind of being. Yeah, the difference being in alignment with your noblest goals would be a higher, or and is a higher state. But we might recognize parts of these other descriptions from martial arts lore or sport experiences or whatever. But it's neat because he's saying, hey, by the way, when you get here, when you actually, join the crew and you run towards your problems and you solve them this kind of a way, this is what it's like. Most appropriately to the situation, consistent with your noblest goals, without premeditation, But also you'll find your interrelationships with others are now marked with a spirit of fairness because they are conducted within an atmosphere where caring and understanding are nurtured. Bingo, bango, bongo. This is amazing. This is an example of that reflecting logos thing we started the talk with today. Last night or the night before, I was playing music in the street and I ended up having a conversation with this young lad. He was an adult. He wasn't a lad like a boy. This young man. Anyway, he was caught up in relativism, and he was demonstrating very well the consequences of this way of being marked by it's all relative to opinion, it's all relative to perspective. There is no right or wrong, there's no true or false really, so therefore somebody saying something good is just as true as this very loud, angry, just like my Pathologos model, dictator and fascist with his Nazi beliefs is just as equally valid as blah 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 blah. That's relativism. That's where it leads. In the Republic, Socrates talks about democracy. All opinions are equal as the second last state before it devolves into tyranny. So what? Well, after we had a little dialogue, I tried to navigate it towards the dialectic, obviously, and not what he was more familiar with, debate, and only because this is what we have to learn. That's why we have this channel. And I was wondering about how effective I was, because this might be the only time he runs into a philosopher his whole life. There are a lot of things he might need to be made aware of, blocks that he is suffering from because of his relativism, but also to find out that relativism isn't the be-all and end-all. It's just one stage, and there is things below it, and there are things above it, and if so, would he be open to reflecting on himself in a new kind of a way? All these sorts of things, like planting seeds, we might say. And I was wondering, did I plant too many seeds? Did I plant enough seeds? Did I give him enough not necessarily bits of information, just point to things that may never be pointed out to him by anybody else, so that he sees it's okay to look at them. It's okay to reflect on your beliefs. It's okay to have an actual conversation that lasts more than one back and forth, or more than one point. It's okay to call out speeches and say, we're not doing speeches. It's okay to distinguish beliefs from understanding. All of these things necessary in the development of our, selves, the development of the logos. And maybe reflecting on his position, and maybe seeing that there's a way out of his position. So, these sorts of conversations, ideally, this is the state we want to be in. So that would be an example of, in that situation, if I were to meet these conditions, I would be in that conversation, in that dialectic. I would be wholly consistent with my noblest goals. My noblest goals would be, dialectic always, right? Isn't that the logos? Isn't that what benefits us? Isn't that what benefits everyone? Isn't that our next stage of development, of evolution as a species? Isn't that how we mature as individuals? Isn't that the kind of learning we can take with us? Isn't that meditation itself? Yeah. So, wholly consistent with my noblest goals, talking to the lad. Appropriate to the situation. I was concerned. Especially when you're saying words like Nazi out loud. Ooh, don't want to do that if you can help it. Even though the context obviously was to say, hey, by the way, this guy that you are looking up to might be it. Which is not a blame, but something to reflect on as a principle, because if you do not insist on the logos, what happens? The pathologos takes charge. That's what we see. It's what we're seeing here. That's why we understand the pathologos as a distortion of the logos. You can't not have the logos. You can't not have a principle. That's capitalism. Our politicians are saying, well, who's to say what's right and wrong? I guess everyone's opinion. Don't you love it that everyone gets their own opinion? So there's no truth? By the way, while we're pretending that's the case and playing that dance, playing that fucking bullshit dance, doing that dance, the pathologos takes over, the fascists take over, the Nazis take over, the capitalist billionaires take over, the people who lack understanding and empathy for anyone take over. The religious fundamentalists take over, the genocidists take over, the pathologos takes over, absence of the logos. Why? Because we're all philosophers. You can't not be a philosopher. Awakening philosophy isn't for some, it's for all of us. It's a way of being we have to awaken to as a species. Because we're doing it anyway. Only the pathologos, the worst possible thing, is in charge until we take charge back. This is how we take charge back. So I was wondering about the seeds that I'd planted, but yeah, and again today I was reflecting, Usia, and I was thinking, you know what? Seeds, but also soil. You also have to have the seed in the right soil, otherwise there might be some deformities in the growth, or it won't grow well, or it won't blossom or won't bloom. So you need soil too. Or an atmosphere where sharing and understanding is nurtured. So my hypothesis at the end of that reflection was, it doesn't matter so much about the seeds, because what would be more important if I made clear what we just read, that following the logos is a relationship, which is interesting because mainstream thinking about conversation is you're going to win, you don't evolve. Your position was right when you were 4 and you spend your whole life defending your Jewish belief or defending your Christian belief or defending your racist whatever the hell. You are right then, so you can't be punished ever. So Trump, I've never made a mistake. Everything I did was perfect. It was a perfect call. Yes, anyone who's ever been punished, and I bet that guy was punished bad by his dad. Trump, I mean. Will learn, well shit, the game is never ever be wrong, because that's what the pathologos slip chimping, looking for mistakes as an excuse to jump on you, which is just an excuse to sadistically play out your pathologos, but from the tyrant role, not the child role. If that's how you grew up, then yeah, the goal is to be in a position of power where you can lie about never being wrong, so you can never be abused, according to some authority figures, pathologos. So of course Trump's saying I was never wrong about anything. Lots of people say that. Whereas what we need to do is instead create the soil or create an atmosphere where sharing and understanding is nurtured, so you can make a mistake every moment and reflect on it, because that's the game. You are making mistakes. It's lying. Trump's lying when he says he did everything right and he's never lost to the point where he's never lost a golf tournament. Because that would be wrong, or an excuse to put him down or something. But we want to lose every golf tournament so we can learn and get better. I mean, until we swing the club directly and without premeditation that's most appropriate to the hole, but consistent with our noblest goals. It's the soil. Because it's a relationship, as we said. You go back again and again. You open the dialogue, keep the dialogue rolling. Ultimately, beyond even this lifetime, out of this body, continuing to reflect in this kind of a way. And then meeting Socrates, if referring back to our reading of the Phaedo. So what? So the soil is perhaps more important sometimes. Because it's a relationship. It's not a one-off, and getting it right. And it sounds like this spirit of this atmosphere where sharing and understanding and nurture is something that becomes a part of your way of being, free of the Pathologos, which is awesome. So I'll clap. From these conditions, there develops a keen sense of justice. Whoa, like Superman. It is when we share our seeing and understanding with another, what I've been encouraging everyone to do today in the Discord. So this is the master telling you to do it too. When we share our seeing and understanding with another, that a deeper side of oneself is reached. Wow. Wow.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
That's better.
Wow.
Because to oneself most ideally challenges... It is when we share our seeing and understanding with another that a deeper side of oneself is reached, because to be oneself, most ideally, challenges the self in the most significant way. Wow. So here we are talking about seeds versus soil, sharing the self-logos and the dialectic, introducing the art of midwifery, because you got to do that, but also at the same time realizing it can't be a one-off. You can't just have one conversation and be made better. It has to be a relationship, not just with you, but with reflection itself. So you need the logo seeds, you need that soil of the atmosphere of sharing and caring and reflection, never blame, and always looking for puzzles, looking for missing the marks. So we've been talking about that, but here it's saying, aside from all of that, if you share this kind of seeing and understanding about the logos and the self with other people, you are benefiting not from seeds and soil, but from challenging their self within them, or of them, or the self, in the most significant way. Because in sharing your seeing and understanding with another, you're being yourself. You're being oneself most ideally. Which means he's telling us what it would mean to he talked about how we are expressing ourselves when we are truly ourselves, free of our pathologos, most ideally without thinking or planning, like the ideal of the samurai and all that. But beyond the samurai, because we are most consistent with our noblest goals. But that's how, not what. What would be the most ideal way of being? And he is saying, sharing your seeing and understanding with others. Is that interesting? That's what you'd do if you were really you. Free of anything else that's false. You'd share your seeing and understanding with others. I suppose, yeah, that activity is the soil. The things that you are seeing and understanding would be the seeds. But on top of that, like a triad, like a hierarchy, that way of being yourself, truly yourself, by sharing this kind of seeing and understanding, benefits others in this way of challenging their self. To be oneself most ideally challenges the self in a most significant way. Like you hear that expression, by shining your light, you are unconsciously giving permission to others to do the same. Which actually was one of the things talked about in that conversation I'm reflecting on right now, because it was weird that we had this long-ass conversation in the street, and it wasn't about the sports team or the weather. And it involved back and forth and disagreements and having to reflect on the nature of the disagreement and stuff. And I think we even said, yeah, even if we didn't come to a conclusion, it was good that we challenged old ways of being by even having this conversation, which was challenging at every step of the way. By, sharing my seeing and understanding through the dialectic in that conversation, challenging his self. And actually, that was the conclusion I walked away. I was thinking, good lad. Good lad. It was a challenge. Every step was a challenge. Everything was different than what he's used to. Because it's the Logos, not the Roman tradition. This is the Greek tradition. And I thought, well, good lad. I was being myself and challenging himself to be himself. To drop the mask, we might say. Drop the act. Come on. Oh yeah, and in Australia you might say, come on. Come on, bro. No cap, bro. I don't know. Alright, what's the time? Alright, I think... yeah, that might be a good time to end the stream. Yeah. Cool. Again, apologize for there being a bit of a delay between philosophy streams. I'm focusing on music. I am doing music streams. Working on getting the kinks out of that. But if you want to join me, Jed Phoenix Music on Twitch. And you can talk, hang out, listen to some music. I play guitar and sing, and we talk, and it's fun. Yeah, so I'm going to try and get as much of these done. We talked about having your nose in it each morning. I'm trying to organize it into my schedule, but I'm a bit full on with music at this point. I'll do my best. And I will prioritize this midwifery over the Mino that we're reading. Only because the significance of midwifery and understanding how to address and solve human problems is severely needed. And I know I'm not charismatic and charming and whatever enough to influence a lot of people, but maybe I'll influence one or two of you weirdos out there who watch along, and then you influence someone else who's not as weird as you, who is charming and influential, and hearing about the Pathologos and midwifery is something they can incorporate into their message in a way that, well, allows us to solve the problems that we are currently suffering from globally, and provides a model for what we would do instead of capitalism. This, create the conditions where we can have questions and solve puzzles together. That's it. Simple. Or rather, You don't even have to do that, because if you do this, you will find yourself most appropriately reacting or dealing with the circumstances consistent with your noblest goals, even if you happen to be a lawmaker. In other words, following the logos might do it for us. So, that's why I'll probably lean towards midwifery, but as I'm saying that, I'm getting the intuition that that's probably a stupid view. That's probably a practical view, or a nearsighted view, because again, they're complementary, aren't they? So we'll see how we go. But thanks once again for joining me. And yeah, I hope to see you next time. Bye.